So a trigger for me kind of was when you mentioned the bias about self-control, that people experience like a loss of self-control, and that could be tied to very many things. You talked about how people feel better spending money when they're not feeling so good about themselves, right? So I do think that there are stereotypes, negative stereotypes. Like, why would I give money to this homeless person? I see them smoking a cigarette. They shouldn't be spending money on cigarettes. Or, well, they're just going to waste money on alcohol. Or, why couldn't they just get a job? Why couldn't they be more disciplined around their money? And so maybe you could actually just break down that concept of the self-control piece of it, because I'm quite sure it doesn't mean what it sounds like on the face of it.
So we know that there are a series of decisions that you're more equipped to make if you're able to exert more self-control. But we also know that people don't come to the self-control equally. And there's a whole lot of different reasons for that. I think a lot of us have heard of the Stanford Marshmallow experiment, where you get little kids, put them in a room with a marshmallow and say, if you don't eat this marshmallow now, you'll get 2 marshmallows later. One of the really interesting things is people have come back and tried to replicate that study into self-control, which again found that the kids that could exert self-control had better outcomes later in life, was that children from less wealthy households were way more likely to take the marshmallow. But actually, when you look at the way that that plays out, if you come from a poorer household where you have less stability and less certainty over the future, it actually is a really good idea to take what you can get right now because the future is less certain. Whereas if you come from a wealthier household, you know that there are going to be 2 marshmallows later. So it makes sense to delay gratification and take the 2 marshmallows. So there are even things like sort of survival mechanisms that change the way that we're patterned to behave around now versus the future from when we're really young, that is influenced partially by our socioeconomic background.